Thanks for joining. This is the 5th webinar for Power Platform Finance. So we're here with Acterys. Got Martin, who's the Group CEO, joining us today, and thank you very much, Martin, for joining us. It's 3 o'clock in the morning there for you. So yeah, really appreciate you taking the time, in the middle of the night to do a session for us. That's real dedication. Thank you. We'll just run through very briefly, as we always do, just spend 5 minutes just going through a little bit about the Power Platform Finance community, and then hand over to Martin to do the webinar on Acterys. So Power Platform Finance user group. So we cover the whole breadth of kind of Power Platform. Obviously, up till now, we've had a session with Andrej on reporting specifically with Xero BI, and then we've had 2 other vendors kind of in the financial modeling and planning space, so ValQ and Power One, show us how they're using Power BI to build upon it to be able to fill financial modeling use cases and planning. And Acterys are also a great end of the space, so this will be the last one of those in this series. And then I think next time we're going to move on to some more things with Power Apps and Power Automate. So we'll look at the broader Power Platform, and then we'll also come back to Power BI and look at that, and also look at things like Dynamics 365, and we're going to try and cover the whole breadth of finance, and look at processes as well as just snazzy visuals and things like that. So we do want to cover the whole idea. If you've got any ideas about what you want to see covered, please do let us know in the feedback form. And by all means, if anyone wants to present a session, also, yeah, please let us know. We're happy. This is a completely community-driven event. We're happy for community members to present and show what you're doing. And that's actually a really good way for us to see it. So you've got myself, Chris, and Naveen. So we've set this up since March this year. We did run a couple of events last year under a slightly different brand, face-to-face, and hopefully we'll resume those once lockdown is over. But anyway, yeah, this is our profiles, and we're on the website. If you want to, please feel free to reach out to any of us with any questions. In terms of on powerplatformfinance.com, just if you haven't been on the site lately, so what we've got the recording from our session a fortnight ago with Power One. That's been quite a popular video. There's lots of people are kind of really interested in the space, and hopefully Acterys are going to give you another angle on how you can do modeling and planning as well. And also the session that I did with Amy a few weeks ago, or published a few weeks ago, it's also been really popular. It's had over 200 views on YouTube, looking at end-to-end with kind of Power BI, so looking at storytelling, looking at all the features in the service like commenting, Q&A, bookmarks, all of those kind of things. So especially if you're quite new to Power BI, or you know about there's a whole raft of features but you're not sure about where they apply, then I'd encourage you to have a watch of that and see if that will give you some information about how Power BI can be used within the finance function. As I said, please do go in and fill in the feedback form, and there's the link there, and I'll put the URL in the chat as well. So you do have to be mindful of the actually, I think that should be a capital F, so it is case sensitive on that, and I just need to double check. I think that's a capital F, it should be actually. So tinyurl.com PPF feedback, and one of the questions on there is about whether you'd like to be able to join a community team for ongoing engagement after this, and as I said, we're planning to do once we get a little bit more critical mass. I think we're almost there now, so I'll set this up once we get a few more feedbacks of this session, and then people could go in and start to engage wider on this thing. So we'll set one up maybe for modeling and planning. So if you're using any of these tools, or you have questions about how to do financial modeling and financial planning in Power BI, then reach out on these teams, and speak to other members of the community, see how other people are doing it, and we'll also add the vendors for this directly as well, and we can pick up conversations offline. So again, I think that'll be a really good way to really put this stuff into practice. So I'd encourage you to do that. So it's one of the questions on the feedback form, which I see Chris has just put a link to in the chat. Up next, so we haven't confirmed the whole next series yet, and all the speakers. But we've got Power Apps and Power Platform integration coming next as our next kind of series after modeling and planning. And just stay tuned, and follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn, and make sure you're on the mailing list if you subscribe to these events, obviously. So we'll make sure that we keep you updated with when those happen. The plan is to run these fortnightly, kind of every Thursday at this time. So be sure to kind of keep that time free, and then we'll go from there. Right. So I think hand over to Martin now. Do you want to share your screen? Thanks, everyone. If anyone's got any questions, obviously throughout any of the time, just raise the questions, and then Chris and I can ask them to Martin. Or if you'd rather speak, just raise your hand in the Teams chat, and then Martin can just prompt you, and you can ask a question over mic. Great. Thanks a lot, guys. Over to you, Martin.
Just let you know, Martin, you're on mute.
I just noticed. Thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. Good day from Australia. Thank you very much for having me, Rishi and Chris. I really look forward to spending this hour with you. As Rishi has already said, please feel free to ask your questions during the entire session. I will monitor the chat, and I will answer the questions that can be answered immediately, and other ones I will try to answer at the end. But yeah, please keep this as interactive as possible. And the key thing for me is that you get your questions covered, and not just to do some marketing presentation here. So just very quickly, a quick introduction of myself. I'm the co-founder of Managerial and Acterys. I've been in the financial planning and analytics space for the last 20 years. I've worked with nearly all the major technologies out there, and we've worked since the start with Power BI. Our group is split into two arms. One is focused on consulting, which is Managerial, and the other one is focused on software as a service, which is Acterys. Just very briefly, as I've mentioned already, we have worked with Power BI from the start. We've developed some of the demos for Microsoft for financials, specifically for public company financials, so to enable users to benchmark themselves against publicly available data, in this case provided by the SEC. And our organization is also very focused on Power BI. So with our product, we offer at the moment 6 custom visuals on AppSource, and we have an application suite where Power BI is a very important part of it. Again, this is probably a bit of marketing here. I won't go into too much detail here. We have customers around the globe, from fairly small to very large. One of the differentiators of our approach is that our solution can really be used in very small organizations, but it scales to very large ones as well. So you can start very quickly without a lot of investment, try it out, and if it works, scale it as big as you can. We have clients that use it for hundreds of users, and we have single SMB companies as well. So what we've learned over an extensive period of time are the typical pain points in this process, typically starting with that the solutions that are in use and very often, and even still, entirely spreadsheet based, so that it's very hard to maintain these solutions. There's functionality missing, in particular around planning. So as a spreadsheet, there's no option, or with using a spreadsheet, to do top-down changes. So for example, you're collating now all your spreadsheets and you want to now adjust a total and automatically break this down. This is not really possible with spreadsheets. Neither is it possible to have a proven three-way financial logic fairly easily available to you. Three-way financial logic, I'm referring to the connection between income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. And then real-time simulation, multi-user write-back, and benchmarking. So this is typically not that easily available. If solutions are available, they're very often silo solutions, so they cover a particular space, like for example, consolidation, planning, budgeting, but then you have another solution for analytics, you have another solution for report writing, and so on. It's a bit disparate. And then you have the issues that your source data is very hard to integrate. And with a few of these aspects, Power BI has offered a much better approach than with traditional spreadsheet or FP&A solutions. And we are extending this a little bit further. And the way we're doing this is we're enabling users to really start within a few minutes. So they can sign on our website, start a tenant within maximum 5 minutes. And then in some cases, just with a click of a button, add their accounting system or their financial systems. In the worst case, if we don't have a standardized app for it, we have generic solutions that allow you to very easily build models without being an IT expert. The second part that we cover is the financial system integration, which is, I guess, comes a little bit already with the first point that I've mentioned. So to enable users to have the optimal data model as easily as possible for the typically used financial systems. Then thirdly, what we are aiming to do is provide an end-to-end solution. So not just the nice visuals on the front end side, but the entire range from initially building the model to having more or less extensive workflows at the end, approval processes, and so on. And as opposed to having a closed-off solution, we are using all the possibilities of the Power Platform. So, for example, we provide with our solution best practice templates that are utilizing Power Platform components, for example, Power Apps, Power Automate, and so on. And we're just adding where we believe the approach can be better. We work with nearly every platform out there. So it's not just limited to analysis services or Power BI, but we can do the write back on any possible data source. So typically it happens in a data warehouse environment or in a data model environment, but we will provide the write back in nearly every possible solution. And I can give you a bit of a glance into this today. And this is, I guess, a first, because we're only launching this feature next week with our new version 20.1. And then finally, just making FP&A smarter by providing and covering driver-based planning, machine learning-based advanced analytics, giving as much as possible the typically needed smarts, for example, for three-way forecasting logic. But then also what we see very often is people have now very good analysis tools, but then what's lacking is that the actions are really taking. So we have a strong focus on making sure that based on the insight, the action is taking, and we're doing this by integrating task management. So you can automatically assign tasks out of your insights, and project management. How are we typically approaching FP&A solutions? The first point, and to be honest, in my opinion, the most important one is your data model. If your data model isn't right, the nicest and most compelling visuals at the front end will not help you very much. So I will focus the presentation today a fair bit on the data model and on the approach that we think is efficient in this context. So the way we are helping finance users there is to automate the data modeling process as much as possible. So as I mentioned before, we have connectors to a variety of accounting systems where really with a click of a button, the users can automatically build an optimal data model in standard Microsoft infrastructure. So typically on Azure SQL, this is what we provide with our solution out of the box. So when the customers sign on, we automatically provide and create a tenant for them, an Azure SQL tenant that they can then immediately use. And we're taking care of all the typically more complex technical details. So our users don't have to know anything about data warehousing and IDs and foreign keys and all this stuff. But we take care of all this and generate the relevant data warehouse or data models pretty much automatically. Or in the worst case, we have generic options where you can really integrate any source. So even if you don't have a connector for them, you can integrate nearly any data source. Then around the data model, we provide an engine that handles the typical financial process requirements. So of course, one of our main focus areas is planning, budgeting, and forecasting. So getting back information into the system, being able to simulate, being able to forecast. And so we're providing an in-memory engine that is built for handling high-scale write-back and modeling. So for many users working at the same time, having the option to get real-time insights. If I change something on one side, what are the effects on the other? So this engine that is working with SQL Server handles these requirements. Then alongside the engine, we are providing the financial logic. So in particular, consolidations are the typical requirements there from intercompany elimination, currency conversion, and a variety of other aspects. And then a variety of planning scenarios. So from cost center planning, HR, OPEX, CAPEX, financing, cash flow, and then the collaboration around it. So approval processes, task management, project management, and so on. And all this governed by a fairly comprehensive governance model where you can exactly specify who is allowed to do what, and then also have always transparency what happened in the system, who changed what data, where is the data coming from, where are we in the process of our forecasting or budgeting process. And then finally, on the front end side, to use all this, as opposed to reinventing the wheel and having our own applications, we integrate with the leading solutions these days that are used in finance. And so we started from the start with having a solution that integrates with Power BI. So at the moment, as I mentioned before, 6 custom visuals that handle these requirements and support these requirements, but also the option to use other front ends. So we have an Excel add-in where you can work on the same data model with very similar functionality that you have in Power BI, but focusing on the strength that Excel has, in particular flexible reporting and the typical advantages that spreadsheets have, but avoiding the problems. So the issue with the spreadsheet is typically that the data is disparate, so people store the data in a spreadsheet, as opposed to working on a single version of the true data model. So in our case, we use Excel only as a container, so not copy and paste and data dumps, but Excel as a container that is connected in real time with your data model and enables you to do the reporting, of course, with the typical Excel functionalities from pivot tables to cube value functions, but then also the write back. So all our write back features are available in Excel as well. So this just as a quick overview, and I will stop now the PowerPoint presentations and show you more things in real life. So let me just quickly switch to my web browser.
Just before you switch over, we've got a question in the chat.
Please.
So the question in the chat is, when you say you take care of the connection of the data model, is that time consuming or somehow instantly read?
Instantly. So you will see this in a second. I will show it to you in real life. So you see now the environment here that manages all this on the screen, hopefully. Can everyone see the modeler now? Looks like, I hope.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
if I talk about things, I had this before, you know, I'm talking about widely about things that are happening on screen, and then people tell me, but I couldn't see it. So yeah, please let me know. If I talk about something that you can't see, let me know. So this is now the environment. So initially when the user's on board, so we have this, now I'm already logged in, so you won't see the form. But normally you get a sign-up form, you put in your details, and then this will automatically generate an empty tenant where you can then manage all your data models. And the typical starting point is the addition of your accounting or SSAS systems. So we have here now a variety of connectors to different accounting and SSAS systems. This will be extended very soon by many more connectors. But these are not just connectors that allow you to connect to this to the respective system, but they automatically build a data warehouse. So you have connectors in Power BI that also allow you to load data, but then it's in Power BI. Here, as opposed to having an API connection, which typically has a lot of issues, it's typically not very high performing. You have issues if you want to handle multiple companies. So to avoid this, we connect to the respective accounting system. And I'm using here Xero now because I think Xero is also quite popular in the UK now. So you connect to your accounting system or SSAS. We also support things like HubSpot and Salesforce. Just press a button for add, put in your details for the respective system, and it will automatically create a data model and a data warehouse with all the data coming from your accounting system. And it's not just the data model. So just to show you this quickly. So once you have added your accounting system, you will see the model here. So this is our modeler, the modeling tool, where you can see then all the details that are coming from the accounting system. And you see in my case already, I have a variety of different ones. That's the other benefit that we offer. So the users can combine as many different accounting systems as they want. So for example, we have a customer in the US, a large listed company with more than $1 billion revenue. So they're using 11 different ERP systems, and it was a nightmare prior to working with us to handle this, to get all the different ERP systems together and manage this. And within just a week, they were able to integrate these 11 different systems, have a standardized central data model, which also functions as a master data management tool, where they can then manage all the data. So if you look at the data now, so these are all now the model tables. And in the end, what you see here is a star schema data warehouse. So every table here is a dimension table that is connected to one or more data models. So you can reuse these dimensions in as many models as you want to. So things like, for example, scenarios that you want to have in all your models, you can use them in as many models as you want. And you can see now what was coming from the integration. So this is now coming typically from an accounting system with all the typical details. So you have the account name, account types, codes, order, and so on. But what we then provide you is the option to completely edit this as well. So very often in the finance world, the users want to map their accounts differently. So they want to create their own grouping here, where they want to map, for example, local company accounts to a general standard. And they can now very easily do all the modeling here. So they can either add, for example, new accounts if they want to, if they want to simulate something that's not there yet. Typically, this is more relevant, in other dimensions. For example, you want to simulate a new product, new departments, very often new scenarios. So the users have the option to edit all this. So one option is just to type in whatever changes they want to make here. The other option is to directly select this from a list. So as I mentioned before, we have a strong master data management focus. So to make sure that the data is properly managed, and not everyone can do whatever they want, but this is governed. So for example, here with the account groups, this is what we call a linked column that is linked to another one. So here I have a dimension for account group. This was manually created, so you can also create all your dimensions manually. They don't necessarily have to come from another system, where you can then define what are the account groups that my users should use here, and then the users can only use the particular linked attributes that you're using here. So full flexibility to edit the data model exactly as you want to, and not just editing, you can also create a completely new data model. So if I want to create now a new data model here for Rishi, I can now select from the existing dimensions. For example, I want to use the accounts here, the time dimension, and the organization, and that has now created a new data model. And in the end, this is really a data warehouse table. So if we look now at this data model, I can see now this is my model. The actual relational table is called cube Rishi WB, WB for write back, and it's using these three dimensions. I could then immediately look at the data, but at the moment this is obviously empty because I've just created this. The other option, in case you can't use one of our connectors, you have the option to link nearly any system via flat files. You can use Power BI models, or you can use SQL tables. So just show this to you quickly that you see how this works. So you point to your source of your data, and typically nearly every system will allow you to give you a text file, so some kind of text format, text export. And I see now here the structure of this file. And then the users can say, hey, I want to use this as my dimension for the company. I want to use this as a time dimension. My granularity here, this is for planning. So I typically plan on a monthly basis. I don't need the day. I want to plan forward until 2023. And my financial year starts like in Australia in July. So I can see, now it told me this already exists. I just rename this. And like this, you can create now your model. And so, by just selecting whatever parts of this detail you want, and then create your model automatically. And this will end up in a model like you've just seen before, what we created with Rishi, where you have the data model, the write back table, and the associated dimension tables around it. The new option, and this is a bit of a world first, so we haven't shown this to anyone yet, is to link your sources. So let's say you have already SQL databases, analysis services, Teradata, Oracle, Salesforce, whatever. You can directly point then to these sources and specify what parts from this data source do you want to use. For example, the customers from Salesforce or whatever details you have in analysis services. And this will automatically create your dimension, respectively your cube. And this is either a live link where it connects live to this source and the users will get the current state of the system, or it's automatically synchronized. So if you, for example, add your Salesforce customer, you can then specify, I want to update my Salesforce customers, the master record here in the data model every 5 minutes. And then the users would get the data in the data warehouse, so physically in the data warehouse, as opposed to the live link to the source, which means you avoid all the typical hassles that you normally face with integration, because typically you have to go through ETL processes, set up the loads and the transformation and all this. Whereas here you can do this just with a click of a button, just point to the particular source, but then have the option also to add to it, like you've seen before. You can add to your model as required. So let's say you want to now segment your customers in a different way. You have your customers coming from Salesforce here, but then you can say, hey, I would like to now segment my customers in a different way. And you can do this directly here in the modeler, but just editing what you want to edit. Or what our customers typically do is, because in the finance space, they obviously still love their Excel. So they have the same option to work with this directly in Excel. So they just point to the particular dimension that they want to use. So for example, this account table. So this is now the table that you saw before with all the details, for example, with your own custom mappings. And then directly in Excel, the users can now, with all the Excel functionality, edit the mapping. And when they're finished, just click one button, and this will automatically update the data model. So moving away from this nightmare of Excel, where you have 50 different sheets that have your master data records or your data, you have everything in the single model, but you have the flexibility that you have in Excel. So I can copy and paste, I can use whatever Excel function I want to have, lookup functions, drag and drop, all the things that you have in Excel, but it ends up in the proper central data model. So this just in a bit more detail, because I think in the other sessions that were more focused on the front end side, typically what we've learned in the last 20 years and what also all studies tell you about FP&A implementation is that the majority of work is always getting the right data model, and that is the prerequisite for everything else. So as I mentioned before, if the data model isn't right, then nothing else will really help. But as you've seen here, as opposed to leaving the data model just in the hands of experts, here the business user is in control. So you saw it's very easy here to manage everything, to build your models. In many cases, it's completely automated for the respective accounting systems, but then they can also edit it the way they want to. And that's typically the problem with traditional data warehouses. So the IT works very extensively on a great data warehouse. But then what happens is that, the finance users want this differently. They say, hey, I want this flag a little bit differently, and I want to edit this and that. And then the typical process is change request. This will take a few weeks, and then it comes back. And then typically the finance users don't need it anymore. And what they do then in their desperation, they start with the Excel hell and, copy and paste the data into Excel, do their changes there, and they're back to square one, where they were supposed to having, a proper single version of the tourist data model to hundreds of Excel sheets flying around. And this is what we want to avoid. So this was the data modeling part. I would like to then quickly move on to the front end side now. So in our case, when the users add their data model, or sorry, their accounting systems, they're not just creating the data model, but as you can see here, with one button, they can automatically generate a Power BI application. So the user just clicks on the particular on the application that was automatically generated. So this is an application that's available on AppSource. So all our visuals are available on AppSource, where the user can immediately start. The only thing is that they will typically need an Acterys subscription for many of our visuals. Some of them don't require. You can see the gray ones don't require it. And I will show you in a second one of our new ones, which is completely free, which has great options for visualization and very useful in a planning and financial reporting context. And you can use it without Acterys with your existing data, and you will see this in a second. So and the same with the apps. So the apps are available here, and the users can just click on the app, get the app for the particular accounting system, for example, Xero. That's what I'm showing here. And without having to do anything, they get a complete Power BI application out of the box. And this application automatically includes all their companies from the accounting system. So I immediately have, for all the companies that I've added, a consolidated view where I can see now, okay, what's going on overall in the group. So all the typical financial metrics. But then I can also look at the particular details. So I can check what's going on in Australia. And you see, of course, immediately the data now adjusts, and I can see the data for the single company. And then you have all the Power BI features. I don't have to tell you too much there. I'm sure you're already experts. So the interaction, the option to do to get proper insights. If you move the mouse pointer to a bar, you automatically get all the underlying records. We support special things of the accounting system. In Xero, you have tracking categories to do, for example, consolidations based on flags. So you can, for example, flag your GL transactions in a particular way, and then can do a consolidation, for example, just for North, this tracking code or whatever other tracking codes you have. And like this, we provide then the users with a wide variety of reports out of the box with all the features. So if you want to use now AI features and see what drove the increase from October to November, you just click a button and you can immediately see the major driver for the change in sales between October and November was this particular company here. And like this, it finds whatever other interesting things the AI algorithms find. Everything here, though, is completely editable. So as opposed to some of the apps out there where you can't change very much, here you can change everything. So you just click on Edit, go back to the Power BI report, and then can change every aspect of this report. So you just go to Edit. So you see then the data model that we've automatically generated. So with all the typically tables from the accounting systems, but obviously also any other source. So the beauty of Power BI, you can add 500 other data sources. So you can easily extend this then with any of the connectors that you have in Power BI, and have your accounting data and whatever other data sources you have immediately available directly in the same model. In addition to the data in the app, we also provide the users with the typically needed financial logic, and this covers a wide range from variances to relative metrics like, I don't know, EBIT percentage and days outstanding and cash position and all this stuff. So the users don't even have to know a lot about DAX. We provide them with a best practice approach that has been refined over the last 5 years to cover the typically needed requirements from a financial perspective. And the last one that I quickly will show you, maybe let's go to this one, is consolidations. As I mentioned before, one of our strong focus areas is statutory and legal consolidation. So to automatically handle the typical requirements there. So typically you're dealing with multi-currency conversions, where you have to correctly convert local currencies into the group currency, and this can vary based on the account type. Some accounts require spot rates, some accounts require historic rates, and so on. So this handles this automatically. Respectively, the users can adjust this and customize this to your needs, because in the end, this is a normal Power BI model where you still have all the flexibility to customize it to your requirements. And then we have some cool features here. We really like the custom tooltips, and you've already seen a few before. I will show you a few more soon. We really like them because they make particular sense in a consolidation environment. So you want to exactly have transparency, what were the intercompany transactions and what were the eliminations. This is typically a very cumbersome and not very liked process that finance professionals have to get involved in. And here it's completely automated. So we completely take care of the intercompany elimination. We support a variety of methods. We have an engine that handles all this. It's also using artificial intelligence to automatically eliminate all the intercompany transactions. And you then have transparency, what has happened here. So I can see for this particular value, this sales account here, we had 2 intercompany transactions. I can see the local currency, the group currency. I can see who were the intercompany parties, the dates, and so on. And obviously, again, all this is customizable to your needs. And in addition to these typical financial requirements, we also then provide the users again with pre-configured templates for the typical requirements that users have around advanced analytics. So, for example, we give them automatically the decomposition tree. We give them optimally configured key influencer, where it will then run the capabilities that key influencer has, where I can see what's driving high invoice values. And I see in this case, this contact here is $4,600 above the average in this particular context. So these things, again, out of the box, is Power BI functionality out of the box available for the users here. So this was a bit the completely automated side. So this is what the users get with a click for the respective accounting system. But I would like to move on now to a little bit more complex requirements and also the generic options. So I'm switching now to a more enterprise type model. So this is typically for larger organizations with international subsidiaries and more extensive planning requirements. And you can see here we have a wide variety of areas here that we cover, from operational expenses, AI-driven machine learning, forecasting, project planning, sales planning, and so on. I will not go through all of them, but I will show you a few. So this is a typical starting point. This is a typical financial dashboard where the users immediately get inside what's going on in the group. So I can immediately see at a glance, who is performing well and who is not doing so well. And then again, our favorite, the custom tooltips, where I can see what is driving the variance in this particular area. So I can see now the custom tooltip where I can see what accounts have driven the variance, and this goes both ways. So what are the positive influence factors? What are the negative ones? And then also how has this performed over time? So you can see the one at the bottom shows you immediately, okay, what's the situation over time? And it's just one example of how you get useful, immediate insights in a very easy way. It works in the same way for the other visuals here. So for example, we have sales results where I can see my salespeople. I can immediately see at a glance, green means they're doing pretty well, red is not so good. So if I move the mouse pointer there, I can then immediately see what is driving the positive results for this salesperson. So what's driving the actual budget variance. And so what we're doing here, we're going across all the transactions for this salesperson. And then we're just ranking it by the biggest influence factor. So you can see we have the absolute variance here. And I can see that the major driver for the good performance of this person here is the Mountain 100 range in February in Asia. So again, immediate insight of what's going on, easily available. This is the variance custom visual that I've briefly mentioned before. So if you want to try this is freely available in AppSource. There's no catch, there's no watermarking. You can use the feature here automatically to have a effective way of visualizing actual comparison variances. So you can see red is a negative variance, green is a positive variance, and I have the comparison of all the entities that you've defined in the visual. It's very easy to configure. You just set, what's the value, what's the comparison value, what do you want to have on the y-axis, what's your small multiples variance, in my case here it's organization, and then it will automatically show you this. And then you have special features. You can switch between relative displays, so you can show the relative variance as opposed to the absolute variance before. And you can also write back, and this brings us to the initial planning features. So the users can here now say, I want to change the assumption here. I want to adapt my budget or whatever the scenario is that the users are using. And I can do my planning here directly by dragging and dropping on the bar. So a very easy way to do your planning. If I'm happy with this scenario, I can save it, and this will be then saved back to the database. So this is a fairly new approach to budgeting and planning directly on a visual basis. Here I have to just specify that this requires an Acterys subscription. So as soon as there's write back involved, then this is not available in the free version. For this, you will need an Acterys subscription. because a visual on its own will never give you write-back functionality. So you will always need the web service, the backend to manage things. And this is what comes with the Acterys subscription. So if you want to write back, then this will require the Acterys subscription. What I can do now here as well is I can then switch back to the typical planning requirements. So I can now switch, for example, to now operational expenses, and I get a typical OPEX form where you can do your budgeting in the traditional way. So you have here now a matrix where I can drill down into particular details. I have the markers here for comments. If I click on a particular item, I can see what's the comment in this particular space. This is supported by conditional formatting, so that you immediately see, you know, where are the variances and what's going on. And what I can do now here is I can immediately then do my planning here. So I can say, okay, if my returns and adjustments go to 10,000, this will raise the total cost of sales to 35,000. But the write back doesn't work just on the detail level, it works on any level. So actually what I did here is this was already, the entry here was not a detail level entry, this was already what we call a splash. So we entered data on an aggregated level, and this is what our engine is doing. So enabling you to do the write back on any level of your data model, we send the intelligent distribution of the results to all the underlying affected areas, and this works in any direction. So for example, I can say, hey, the 35,600, that's not enough. I think this will be 10% higher. I can just put in here add 10%, and as you can see, it has now adjusted the total and also all the underlying cost of sales account as well. If you see, you know, if I moved the mouse pointer to this question mark here, I can see all the options that we have, and we have a variety of options to enter the data here. I can repeat, for example, particular entries. I can say I would like to write this forward until the end of the period. You would then type R. I can decrease it, and you have a variety of ways to enter your data directly here. And then obviously all the collaboration around it. So the ability to be able to enter your data directly, so your comments on a filter-driven comment. And so I can say, hi Rishi. And as you can see, we have a little editor here where you also have rich text formatting options. So you can use web links here. You can format this in any way. So for the creative people among the finance community, they will enjoy this. So it's not just that you can store the filter-driven comment, but you can write novels here if you want to, and you can format this in whatever way, and you can link, for example, documents to it or whatever other details you want. So this was the typical traditional operational expense planning. And I'll just move on now quickly to the interesting areas. So this is again likely pretty much a world first. We haven't shown this in public yet. This is one of our newest visuals. This is not even yet published, but this allows you to do project planning. So here the users can do directly their project planning. So as opposed to just displaying data, they can immediately enter new tasks here and put in all the other details. So for example, I want to use this particular date. This is the progress, and then I want to have some people responsible for this. And so it's not just presenting the Gantt chart, but being able to more or less do all your project management directly from Power BI. And all the data here is stored again in the normal Acterys data models. If I want to see what's going on, I can just go to the respective table. In my case, this is the tasks table, and then see, you know, whatever the users have entered here, whatever was done. So it all ends up in the central data model with all the respective details for the particular task. Maybe I think we have 5 more minutes, Rishi.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, carry on.
I just wanted to confirm how much more time I have, and I can't see any questions yet.
I've got one that's just come in now, actually. Are there workflows, tasks lists, and approval processes?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll just switch here now to a more elaborate data entry form. So it's using the same visual that you've seen before, but in addition, then a few more for workflows and more detailed budgeting requirements. As opposed to entering the data directly, the users can go to the particular account and then break it down. So they can enter new items here and explain, why are they doing this data, and break it down into different details. It will record, who has entered this, and then I will see the total on the particular account. So the question was, can you do workflows? Yes. So you have the option here. So you can see in this case, this was no, this doesn't close. This was already submitted, this planning form. But if I switch now, for example, to a new one, let's see what France is doing. This will then automatically adjust. It's unfortunately also submitted. Let's see, maybe Canada. Yeah, so this is good. So you can see this one was not yet started. So the users can do their planning as we've seen before. And then when they're finished, press submit. This will then automatically kick off the workflow. So I will now in a second get an email that Canada has submitted the budget with a link to this. I can then check it. And if I'm happy with this, I can approve it. So this will then change to the manager view, where you get an approve or a reject button. And then the particular plan will be either approved and will be part of the overall plan, or rejected. And then the user will get an email that they have to send it again. Let me just move this a little bit away. I will just open this now. So what has happened? I've received this email now. The Canadian division has submitted the budget. This is the link. And then this would kick off the workflow. I hope this has answered the question. I can see another one, what's on the fly simulation. On the fly simulation is pretty much what you've seen before. So where you, as opposed to writing the data back, you can simulate with immediate results. So here I have the sales planning, again, on an aggregated product group level. So I can drill down here and go to more detailed levels. Or I can do my simulation directly on the aggregate level. So I can say, okay, based on COVID, this will likely go down a little bit. This will also go down. This will go a little bit up. This will go up, and this will go up. Then I can immediately see on the fly, what are the implications? So we have now a new total sales of 9 million. This is compared to the comparison value of 10.5 and 85%. 85% of the original target. And if I'm happy with this, I can save it as a new target. So we saw before, based on the previous one, we had 5.34 million gross margin and 53.6% gross profit margin. So let's see if this is already there. Normally this should give me a message. Not you have to believe me. No, it's there. So 5.34 million before, 53.6 million gross margin. If I now click on refresh, I see now the gross margin went even further down to minus 6.3 million, and the gross profit margin to minus 69.91%. So this is now, I've saved the scenario. And obviously, you can have as many scenarios as you want. So the users can directly create new scenarios from here as well. So they can either use all the editing functionalities directly here from Power BI. So for example, if they want to create a new scenario, they can do this directly here and manage all the scenarios. So if I want to have a new scenario now for Rishi, I can just put Rishi here and then just save this. And then this is a new scenario that's part of the data model, where I can then immediately do my planning on in whatever part of these things. And I guess as we're now pretty close to the time limit, I will close it off now with the three-way forecasting. So I haven't covered all the aspects. We have very comprehensive HR, human resource planning, and capital expenditure and financing instruments and a variety of other things. But it all connects. So these are not disparate planning forms. This is all part of the same model with the financial logic already covered. And so I can then immediately see, based on my OPEX planning, based on the sales planning, HR, CapEx, and so on, what are the cash flow implications? And then if I see here that my cash balance goes below the red line, I can go to financing and, for example, now plan for the financing instruments that I need to cover this shortfall. In our case, we don't have one, so we're lucky. But I can then put in the details here, whatever duration I want, the interest rate, the amount that I will need. And again, this will then be added to the data model with the respective implications. So with your interest payments, the principal payment, repayments, all this stuff. And this will immediately reflect on the cash flow as well. So you can say, okay, will this new financing instrument cover my cash flow shortfall, or are we good? So, sorry, one last thing. I think I have only briefly, well, you've seen the editing of the data model in Excel, but just to quickly show you also the planning options. So planning works on the same model. So the users have the same model that you've just seen, but here now with Excel flexibility. So when the users are doing their planning, I can now put in my numbers directly here with all the Excel options that you have. Looks like I'm not logged in here, but so I can now drag and drop, do all the typical stuff that you do in Excel. So the ease of use. And then once you're finished, you just press commit, and this gets then updated in the central database. The other thing that we often ask for is more sophisticated requirements for dynamic reporting. And this is also possible. So you see here what's often a challenge in the finance space is asymmetric reports. So I want to show the actuals of 2017, but I want to compare it with a different time period, with a different scenario. So the users can just select the particular scenario that they want, and it will automatically update based on the latest data. Looks like I don't have any forecast values here. So let's just switch to the budget. So I have full flexibility to create the report, and I'm not limited by the limitations in the pivot table. So in the pivot table, you're forced to symmetric. I mean, there's ways around it, but it's typically symmetric reporting. But the formula-based approach that we're using here, you have total flexibility. So I cannot take a value from here to there, and if I update the data, it will be still correct. So this just is a quick overview of planning in Excel. Also things like rolling forecast, where you say, okay, this is my starting period, or this is my current period. From here, I want to use, until here, I want to use the actuals, and then for the future, I want to use my forecast. I want to then update my forecast and enter my numbers here. So you have the typical rolling forecast and driver-based planning requirements as well, available as well in Excel, but all on the one data model. And with this, I guess this is a good finishing point. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask your questions.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions. So I think let's carry on. Obviously, if anyone needs to kind of leave, then obviously we'll have these on the recording afterwards, so you can watch them. So one question is, what is the licensing model? So can consumers of reports avoid having to get an Acterys license so that the cost is restricted just to a few power users?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we are, as opposed to many of our friends in the industry, we are very transparent with our pricing model. So unfortunately, our industry is not known for being very cost effective. Oops, sorry, this was the wrong page. Not being for very transparent and very cost effective. So typically in the last decade, FP&A solutions were very expensive. In our case, we very openly communicate our prices. We treat everyone the same. That's another problem in the industry, that everyone got a different price because no one openly communicated the prices. We are completely transparent. Everyone gets the same price, gets the same. We have discount schemes as well, but they are standardized. So if you buy more, you get more discount. Mm-hmm. So we have two models. One is based on what we call the SaaS pricing, so software as a service, so typically for software as a service systems, typically cloud-based accounting systems, but also things like HubSpot for marketing and time management and inventory management. And these are all priced in the same way per company. So the investment is $49 per company, and that gives you everything. So that gives you all the data model, it gives you the visuals, it gives you the Power BI apps and the Excel templates. And if you get 10 of them, it gets even cheaper. It gets down to $29 per company per month. So this is the SaaS pricing. Then we have the premium pricing that's based on the users. And we have two user types. The worst case are these two. As I said before, it gets cheaper the more you buy, but the worst case is this. So you can start with our product at $129 a month. So this is an admin that gives you everything. It gives you the Azure Cloud tenant, the generic integration tools, the Power BI visuals, and all the other components here. And that's all it takes to get started. If you then want to add planner users to it, so other users that can also, that have all the options that I've shown you now, with planning and editing and so on, but not user administration, it's $69 per user per month. And as I said, this is the worst case. If you get 10 users, it gets already cheaper, and then in
so that's just for people who. That's just for people who are actually writing back, though, right? So for people who are just consuming the visual the reports that have Acterys visuals in there, do they need a license or?
It depends. So if they need to authenticate, yes. If they don't need to authenticate, then they can access the database. So in the end, our customers control the underlying SQL database. So what's behind this? So for example, if you look at the database that you've just seen today, is a relational database which contains all the write-back tables. As I mentioned before, it will be able to store the data in a variety of platforms, not just in the SQL database, but if you want SharePoint or SAP HANA or analysis services or whatever it is, you can use all these options as well and then store the data there. But by default, we give the customers a Azure SQL tenant where all the data is stored. And so the customers control this database. You can see all the tables are here. So they can access this database then with any tool. So this is not limited to Excel or Power BI, but obviously as a SQL database, you can use anything. If you really want to, you can use Tableau, Click, and whatever tool you have that can access a relational database. So the beauty is you have total flexibility. You're not, hostage of a vendor that says, you have to buy now my front end to continue. You have a standard database with all the data. If it's authenticated, we have platform charges. So obviously there's cost involved in having these tenants, these Azure tenants. And if you have more users, then we charge a platform fee based on the number of viewer users. This is typically also pretty cost effective. So I think for 10 users, it's $99 a month. And again, it gets cheaper the more users you get. So there's this platform charge based on the number of users. We haven't covered it here because there's a lot of varieties here. We also support that the customers can use their own tenant. So if they use their own tenant, then there is no platform charge. So it doesn't have to be in our Azure tenant. You can use your own tenant, and you can also use your own SQL database. So your own on-premise SQL database.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be really interested in seeing some more of that, actually, about how that works, and yeah, maybe as well as some of the integration. We've got a question on narrative reporting. I'm not sure exactly. Jan, do you want to elaborate on that maybe? And also he's got a question about, can you do Monte Carlo simulation?
With narrative reporting, yeah, it would be good to see what specifically is referred to there.
Yeah. Jan, are you still there? Not sure. But again, what about the second question? Could you about Monte Carlo simulation?
Monte Carlo, yeah, absolutely. In the end, this is we, to be honest, don't have it out of the box. But as you've seen, in the end, the approach that we are taking, you can do anything because you have SQL tables, you have a logic around it, and the logic again is up to you. So you can use Power Automate, you can use SQL logic, you can use DAX calculations. You can use Excel functions if you use the Excel add-in, and you have a variety of other. We have an API as well, so you can even build your own applications completely standalone with your own, logic requirements and calculation requirements. So it's absolutely doable because we are using this flexible platform approach. You have already seen, some of the parts here were standard Power Platform components. So you've seen, for example, for the loan management, we had a Power Apps, and then we have used it in a few other components. So we just have these best practice templates that are working with the Acterys database structure, and our customers get these templates with the subscription. So we don't charge for this. And then obviously these can be adapted exactly to the requirements. And we have now also a quite extensive partner network around the world where, the partners can develop their own solutions. And for example, the person that asked for Monte Carlo, if they know Monte Carlo, I would happily invite them to work together with us and maybe have an initial demo environment or demo model that we can then also jointly commercialize.
Sure. And so Jan was saying...
Can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, hi there.
Yes, it's Jan. Yes. So on the narrative reporting, I was really thinking of more than just commenting. So let's say you have a report and you want to do an analysis of the variances, and then you want really to put some information. Why is the variances? And then this can be really many words, not only a few words, and then publish this maybe in a report book, in Word or whatever, something like this.
Yeah, so you mean like kind of how you do where you have visuals and then you put some commentary against them, and then you'd put them in PowerPoint typically, right? Obviously.
Exactly.
So to give those kind of commentaries. Yeah, we've seen. I mean, I've shown how to do that with kind of bookmarks, I guess, and text boxes. But yeah, if there's a way to build it in and have those linked up into a database, I mean, that would be amazing. But do you know what we're talking about, Martin?
Yeah, I understand. I mean, in some ways we have this. So our comments visual allows you to enter unlimited content. So in the end, this is a database transaction or database record where you can write a novel if you want to, with all the formatting options that you have. So you could enter to whatever the data point is. So this is also, of course, configurable to exactly what you need. So in this case, I've got it by organization. I can put now the comments by organization and the two other filters, time and scenario here. But that obviously can be used in conjunction with all the other visuals. So you have then the option to, like Rishi has already said, as long as you have the bookmark there, you have the visual and the comments related to it added to a bookmark, and then export the entire thing to Power BI, the PDF, print it, whatever you like, and you get the narrative reporting this way. The other option that we offer automated report distribution in Excel. So you can set up your workbooks directly in Excel. You can put whatever comments. Again, the comments are then data driven. So you have in addition to the structured number, you have the comments that then, we show here. And what our report distribution does, it would go through a list. So you can administrate the list where there's some context missing here. So here you would have, let's say, for example, organizations. Because it looks like I deleted a reference here on the sheet. So where you have, for example, you put in the organization, then you put in who is the recipients. So I can now put for United Kingdom, Rishi. So it would use then this variable, so the organization variable, and go through the list, apply the variable for all the reports, and send then the report with the comments to the recipient. Is that answering your question, Jan?
Yeah, this is also one thing. Maybe my last question on this: if you have a parent company and then you have subsidiaries underneath, if you would like to collect all the comments, because this is quite difficult for other tools, can you do this? To have also the comments which are on the sub levels and
yeah,
bring them together. Yeah, I think
yes.
this is a nice functionality.
Because we store the comments in the same database. So I hope I can show this quickly. So for us, the comment is in the end treated in a similar way as all the other data, so like a number, but it's just a separate column. So if you look, for example, here at this one, I hope I have something there. So this means you have everything in a structured database. So you have the comment for the particular detail, whatever it is, and then you can do whatever you want with it. So you can apply a filter on it and show the comment and the data points. So you can see it here. I don't have any comments here, but you can see the principle. So I have here these dimensions: scenario, date, organization, cost center, account, and then I have the two fields: text, comment, and amount. So in your case, for example, if you put in a comment for 2017 January, that your entire comment, and as you saw before, this would have all the formatting, and this can be nearly as long as you want. So it's nearly unlimited from a size aspect, all the links as well. You would store the comment and the number together, and then you can do with it whatever you want. So for example, if we go into to Power BI, I show it to you because one thing I haven't mentioned is the Audit Trail. So you saw it's very powerful here to enter data. So you want to be in control of what's going on. So everything that happens in our system gets recorded, and I can then analyze by user, by model, every single transaction that the users have done. So for example, someone has created a cube here, someone copied data, and so on. So I can filter this now in whatever way I want. And the principle is the same for, I think what you were asking for is I have then a database, a structured table with all the coordinates of the comment in this case, and then the actual comment itself. And then you can filter it and do whatever you want with it with this particular table.
And you could build a report which shows these comments. Huh?
Exactly. I mean, you have then all the Power BI, all the visualization options that Power BI has, or in Excel equally, to build the report exactly as you need it. But you have all the components of the report there, and then as you know, the power of Power BI is, I guess, nearly unparalleled these days. So you can really do anything.
I mean, that'll be really interesting
fine.
to show
Thank you.
at some point as well. If you could do a demo at some point, Martin, on
I'd
actually
love to, yeah.
on having those comments and showing them as like you'd present a PowerPoint deck, right, to the finance board and kind of showing this is the reasons for the movements and this is what the drivers are on all of those. That'd be really cool to see.
I really appreciate the comment. This gave me a few inspirations as well. We definitely will integrate this in our demo. I think it's an important feature. The other thing that I forgot now is paginated reports. You have the same options with paginated reports, so the former reporting services, where you then have the more transactional reporting options as well. Yeah,
great. So look, thanks for the questions, everyone, and absolutely. I mean, I think there's more to see here, and I think with all of this stuff that we've seen, we can only cover a little bit of the breadth of functionality in an hour. So I'd encourage you to fill in the kind of feedback forms and put yourself down for joining one of these teams. And as I say, over this weekend or something, I'll try and get those set up. So then through Teams, let's carry on the conversation and let's look at explore these into more detail. Great. I think that was it for the questions, and we're quite a bit over time already, actually. So I think let's leave it there. Thank you again very much, Martin. Really appreciate you taking the time to about this, so that you get back to sleep.
Thank you very much.
Yep. No, thanks. And yeah, so look forward to continuing the conversations, and I hope everyone's enjoyed that. And yeah, let's carry on. Let's carry on these conversations.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.